Okay, so welcome to the Class Observation System webinar. This one is for lead agencies. We have a separate one for observers and a separate one for site coordinators. So if you are fitting into either of those two categories, you're going to want to make sure that you find those webinars. This one is for lead agencies. Okay, so diving right in, our agenda for the day is we're going to start with coordinated observation expectations, then do kind of a walkthrough or an overview of the observation system, and then we're going to look at the different functions of the actual online portal part. You're going to see some different images of what the portal is going to look like and how to use it. And then we'll wrap it up with how to provide some support for sites and observers and how to support you, the network coordinator. So coordinated observation expectations. So during each observation period, every classroom is expected to be observed once, and 10% of classrooms at all sites need to be shadow scored. So there are two observation periods over the course of a year. There's the fall and the spring, just like semesters. Fall runs from August 1st to December 15th. The spring observation period runs from January 1st to May 15th. During this time, every classroom should be observed at least once by a reliable observer, and 10% of classrooms should be shadow scored in the fall and again in the spring. Observations, once they're completed, should be submitted no later than 10 business days. And observations are always scheduled by lead agencies for local observers, and then by ULL, which is the Picard Center for third-party observers. Another thing to keep in mind is that once a classroom is set up, its age configuration or the classroom configuration cannot be changed. So for example here, if you have a group of students who are toddler whenever they enter a classroom, and over the course of the year they age and they become pre-K age, the classroom is still thought of as a toddler classroom. And so for observations, they should only be used, or they should only be observed using the toddler tool. So different things can happen during the year, or what we're looking at here are some different scenarios for a site that may be open or closed depending on what point of the year we're in. So we want to walk through what are the implications of a site opening or closing. So if a classroom is open on October 1st or February 1st, it needs to be observed. It needs to be included in the performance profile for both the site and the community network. If it exists on October 1st and February 1st, then this is kind of a typical site. It's a way to think about it. It will receive a performance profile. It'll be factored into the community network rating. The vast majority of sites are probably going to fall into this category for you. But it may be the case that it exists on October 1, but not on February 1, in which case it will not receive a performance profile rating, but all of the observation scores that occur there during the fall will be included in the community network performance profile. Let's say it opens after October 1, then it is not eligible to participate in the current learning year, and it won't count toward the community network performance profile rating. If it discontinues participation in a community network after October 1 because of a license type change, then it will not receive a performance profile rating, but those scores will be counted toward the community network performance profile. We touched on this kind of at the beginning, but a classroom is only closed when it's set up under the wrong classroom configuration because we can't edit those. So if a teacher leaves a classroom and then gets replaced by another classroom, either the site or network coordinator both have the ability to change it if they want. They can go in and they can edit the classroom to reflect the new lead teacher's name. You do not need to close the classroom for that. But if a classroom is open under the wrong configuration, so let's say it's an infant classroom, we open it as a toddler classroom, then you're going to have to close the classroom, create a new one, and make sure the age configuration is correct. All site leaders, these are principals or directors, they need to be made site coordinators for their sites, and that includes any other leaders that are responsible for classrooms at that site. So maybe a lead teacher or a master teacher. sort of however things are set up at your site. A couple things to keep in mind whenever you're entering in observations. The Early Childhood Web Portal will cause you to time out if you have been logged in for too long. This can get really annoying and create a lot of extra work on the observer's end. So just be sure that you're paying attention to how long you've let the portal sit, because it will time out and make you log back in and you'll lose what you're currently working on. You only ever want to be accessing the portal from an actual computer or laptop. You don't want to use a smartphone or a tablet. That can cause problems with the formatting. Make sure you limit the time between each cycle when you're entering in observation scores. This goes back to that timeout issue. You can always just save where you're at and stop in between cycles and log out, and you can log back in and continue entering scores for later cycles. That won't cause a problem. Another thing to keep in mind is when you are entering these in and you select the other field, you need to make sure that you include a brief description that's no more than 40 characters. As mentioned, always log out after each observation has been submitted. This can, again, cause a timeout issue. And when you're putting in negative classroom scores, be sure that you're putting those in as you've actually scored them. The system will do the conversion for you. Don't convert them first and then put them in, otherwise you'll have an inaccurate negative classroom score. All right, so let's look over the system and the different permissions that you have. So what we're looking at here is kind of a hierarchy. At the top, you've got me and other people here at the department, the DOE coordinators. We have access to almost everything within the system. We can always support any of the people who are below us because we have more permissions than anybody else. But for you, the lead agent, you're considered to be a network coordinator when you're in the system. You can set up sites in classrooms, you assign observations to different observers, and if you yourself are observing, you can also go in and add yourself as an observer. Below you is the PCARD Center. Their only responsibility within the portal is to enter in observation results and to schedule observations for their third-party observers. They're not going to be changing anything in your classrooms or editing site data or anything like that. Below them are our site coordinators. A site coordinator is just what it sounds like. It's someone who's responsible for an individual site. They can set up classrooms, they can edit those classrooms. However, they cannot schedule observations. Again, that is the responsibility of the network coordinator. So you want to be on top of that because site coordinators can't do it. Below them are observers. They are just what they sound like. They're people who have observed and have things to upload. They don't have the ability to edit anything either. They're only there to report what they saw. And then there are RNRs, resource and referral organizations. They have a level of permissions as well to kind of look around, but they're not really too much of a concern for us. So let's go through what you can actually do in the online portal. So network coordinators are granted the most access on the portal. As you can see here, you can add and update and view site coordinators. You can mess around with sites. You can edit classrooms. You can look at observers and observation results, schedule observation orders, and so on. Site coordinators can do a little bit less. Of course, site coordinators, if they're added as a read only, they can only look at what's in there. They can't actually edit anything. And then finally, there are just the observers, and all they can do is view observation results and view or complete observation orders that you, the network coordinator, assign. This is the legend. So you're going to see these icons on multiple different pages throughout the portal. I'm not going to read them all to you, but for instance, if you see that wrench icon, that means that you can either add or edit information. You'll see that on different pages as you go throughout the portal, and it always means the same thing. So it doesn't change its function depending on what page you're on. All right. So starting off, if you're the network coordinator, First three things that you need to think about for your network is one, you need to add the site coordinator for each site. That's going to require you to have the first and last name and email address of all the different site coordinators within your network. Two, you need to add your observers, which again is going to require you to have the first, last name, and email address of all the observers that are going to be observing in your network. And then the kind of ongoing part of all this is your follow-up work. You need to ensure that all sites have been added to the community network, or basically all the networks at this point, everything has been set up. But it could be that one is missing, or that one is established but hasn't been added to the portal. We kind of rely upon you to communicate that to us if that problem occurs. You can go ahead and add any of those missing sites. We're going to show you how to do that. And if there's an issue with site codes, sometimes this does occur. You just need to make sure that we know about it so we can go about fixing it for you. Okay, so if there's a site that's missing, or if you're building a community network up from scratch, this is going to be your first move. So if you're looking on the home page, you can click on that wrench icon that's next to your network name. You click on that, and you're going to see a little box pop up, like what's in box number 2 here, and you can search for it. You can search for it by name, or preferably if you have the 6-digit site code, you can search using that. The name will work, but sometimes if a site name has abbreviations in it or weird punctuation, the system will sometimes have trouble recognizing it. So your best bet's always the site code. If you know the name, you're probably going to be fine, but you might want to keep those site codes handy. Once you've done that, you're going to see a list of sites pop up that match what it was that you typed in. So the example here is they searched using the name Central, which populated a list of all the different places that have the name Central in it, and then they could go through and they could add which ones they needed. That add button is going to add that site to your network. If it's got a check with that OK, it means that that site has already been added to a network. Once you've done that, you've got your list of sites for your network. You then need to go in and actually set the sites up. So if you're back on your home page, you're going to click that wrench icon again to go to your list of sites, and then you're going to be looking at your list. If you go here to number 2, for each of these, you need to click that edit button again, and you're going to see a window pop up that looks like this. So you see there, it's got listed the information. Right now that there's no information in there, which is what you're going to need to go in and put in. So if you go down there to where it says number 3, you click that update button, then you're going to be able to edit this information. You need to put in a site administrator, their first and last name and their email. You can add a title, a phone number if you'd like, but you don't have to. And you need to specify at the bottom the site type, whether it's a school, Head Start, or a child care facility, and the site configuration, whether it's an infant site, toddler, or pre-K. Remember, the majority of the majority of classroom ages is going to determine the site configuration. And then you'll click that button that says submit, and the site will be set up. Maybe more importantly though, once you have that done, you need to go in and actually add all the classrooms. So adding classrooms to a site is usually something that is handled by site coordinators. However, because we give you guys the freedom to decide how that system's going to work best between you and your site coordinators, you also have the ability to do this. So if you're looking back at your list of sites, you've got them all set up. Now you can go in and click the stacked textbook icon, which is under the list with classrooms. And that's where you can look at the current classrooms that are in there, edit them, or add new ones. If you need to add a new one, then you're going to go down to the bottom of the list, and you're going to see a button that says Add New Classroom Record. You click on that, and you're going to see this little box pop up here. It says number 3, and you're going to need to add a classroom name the age configuration for the classroom, whether it's infant, pre-K, or toddler, and a lead teacher name. Remember, once you've chosen the classroom configuration, we can't edit that. So be sure that you've got that correct. Otherwise, we have to close the classroom down, create a new one. Once that's done, then you need to think about assigning observations. So this process is kind of similar to adding a classroom record, except now you're going to just add observation orders. So you're looking back here, you click on a site that you need to add them in, you're looking at your list of classrooms. At the bottom, you've got a button that says Add Observation Orders. You click that, and you're going to see a box pop up that's right here where it says number 2. And at this point, you can either find or search for the observers that are already in the system, or if you need to add them, you click on New, and you'll have a new option to add a new observer. If you click New, you're going to have a series of boxes pop up below there. You need to add their email, their first and last name. You can add a middle name if that will help you, but you don't have to. And then you just click the button at the bottom where it says Find/Add New. Once the observer is in the system, then they will pop up right here. So if we wanted to add, or if we needed to find Miss Morgan, we could search for their name. We've got Miss Morgan here. And then if you want to assign them observation orders, you click this select button. If you click that select button, you're going to have a list of classrooms pop up at that site. And so if they only need to have observations done for classroom 001, then you would just click the checkbox right there. You go down here at the bottom, you put the observation period in, whether it's fall or spring, put the observation date, and you schedule for what time it's supposed to occur. Then click that add button, and then your observation orders have been added for that observer. Once they're ready to report the observation results, they're going to see a screen that looks like this. They need to add, of course, their name, or I'm sorry, they need to add the name of the lead teacher that they just observed. Their name will automatically populate underneath observer and submitted by. If there's another adult that was in the room, they can add that. And if there was a shadow scorer, they can also add their name. We're going to come back to shadow scorer and talk about what that means. They need to make sure that they put the observation date and their time of arrival, and they'll click submit and next. Then they're ready to enter in the actual scores. So they're going to add how many children there were, what time did it start, what time did it end. Then they're going to, of course, put in their actual scores, the format content, and the numerical scores. Then they'll click submit and next whenever they're done with this, and they'll have to do the same thing for cycles 2, 3, and 4. Once all the cycles have been put in, they need to mark their departure time, and they'll click the button that says conclude the observation. And that's all you have to do to report results. So I mentioned shadow scoring. Shadow scoring, this is kind of an overview of what we're talking about when we use that term. So shadow scoring is when two reliable class observers conduct a class observation at the same time in order to sharpen their class observation and coding skills. We have a 5-step process for this that we recommend here. So step 1, you're just deciding who's going to be the actual observer, who's going to be the shadow scorer. Step 2 is actually conducting the observation. So make sure you're there at the same time, make sure you're watching the same exact thing, and you're beginning and ending at the same time. Step 3, you've got your results, or you've got your notes, and you need to take 10 minutes to independently figure out the results of that observation, the score, and the code. Again, do this independently. We're not looking to have a consensus score yet, because that's what's going to help us understand what we need to change in the future, doing it independently. Then for step 4, you're going to come together and you're going to look at your scores. And if any of your dimension scores are off by 2 or more, you want to mark those. Then you need to discuss who actually has the best score for that. So who has the most supporting evidence that aligns with the class manual. And then you need to reach a consensus on what the score for that dimension should actually be. Step 5 is finishing this up. You're going to do this for the remaining cycles. And then you need to follow this formula because we want to calculate what the reliability percentage is. So you're going to count to determine the number of scores that were off by 2 or more across all 4 cycles. Once you have that number, you want to subtract that from the total possible scores. Then divide that result by the number of total scores to determine what your percentage of reliability was overall. If you've completed a shadow scoring, remember 10% of all classrooms at a site need to be shadow scored, so it's important that we have logged them correctly. Whenever that observer is putting in their observation results, they can fill out the box that says shadow scoring observation, put the first and last name of whoever was the shadow scored, and the system will mark that as having been a shadow score. Okay, so once the observation results are in the system, you may want to go back and look at them, or maybe even save and print them off, depending on if you're going to have a meeting with an observer or if you need to communicate it to a teacher, or whatever it is that you may need to do. So when you're looking at the observation results, you're going to see a sheet that looks like this, a scoring summary sheet. And if you want to actually manipulate that or print it off or something, you'll go up to the top there where this red box is, and you're going to see a floppy disk icon. If you click on that, you've got an option to save it either as an Excel, PDF, or a Word document. Additionally, you may want to print off much larger reports than just an individual observation report. To do this, you're going to go up along the top of the screen and you're going to look at the various drop-down menus that are available to you. When you see the one that says reports, if you click on that, go down and click network level reports, you're going to see this list of reports. There's in-depth explanations for all of these in the class observation user guide. Here we're going to provide you with kind of a snapshot of them, but you can always go and kind of dig deeper in there. Personally, I would recommend just downloading each of these at some point, playing around with what's there, familiarizing yourself with the data that's available. You might find that you need to combine different reports, but you'll have to kind of know what to do with them and what's available in order to know what you need to do. So these reports could be dealing with observation completion. It may just show you which ones are planned or if there's observations that are missing. You can pull out averages by domain or by dimension to kind of look at how you're doing as a network or how certain sites are doing that you may want to help support. You can do a Teachstone extract, which has a lot of data in it, or you can do something that's more narrow, like a raw scores report or average scores report, or an observer reliability report. Again, all of these are available to you. We're here to support you if you need any kind of assistance in analyzing these or kind of figuring out how to make use of them. But they're mostly pretty intuitive. And like I said, the best way to learn it is just to go in there, and I would download one every so often and kind of play around with it and see what makes the most sense for you to look at. Okay, so wrapping up here, we're going to look at how to provide support for sites and observers on your end, and then look at how we can best support you as a lead agent. So I mentioned this at the beginning, but there are separate webinars for site coordinators and for observers. Recommend that before you start fielding questions from sites and observers that they have familiarized themselves with this. It's going to give them more power to do their job more effectively, and make sure that you're only being called in for big questions that they really can't solve on their own. And then likewise, make sure that they have access to the observation system user guide. This is available on the Louisiana Believes website, or through this webinar. Lastly, network coordinators, the best way that you're gonna be able to support sites and observers is making sure that all of the sites and classrooms are set up in the portal by October 31st. Past that point, we get into a lot of issues with an observation was assigned and then that site ended up moving or changing, or a classroom was closed and people thought it was going to be open, and it can really make the process a lot more painful than it needs to be. And then lastly, helping sites understand their observation data. We're dealing with a variety of familiarity levels with the class observation system as we roll this out, or as we all kind of learn it together. And that's a really key role that you can play, is helping sites really internalize that data and make it useful to them, and make it not just about accountability, but make it empowering for them, where their teachers can really affect change in their classroom based upon their own results, rather than it just being something that pops up once a year or once a semester from the department. If there's an error in there, if a classroom gets closed, or if a site gets closed, if something were to happen like that, don't ever panic. Just email us at earlychildhood@la.gov, and me or somebody else can definitely reach in and figure out what's happened and talk it through with you. That is part of our job, so don't feel like you are inconveniencing anybody. If there is an error that needs to be corrected, something's been entered wrong or something needs to be changed with an observation score, you're going to have to submit an error correction form. There's documentation for that is available through the Louisiana Believes website. I believe it just says error correction forms, and you can submit that to the email address as well. And then lastly, the portal is really going to work best through Google Chrome. So if you're using it on Explorer or on Firefox or Safari, give it a shot on Google Chrome before you confirm there's an issue. Sometimes there's a formatting problem, and it can be tricky. So if you need support, it's really the same kind of channels exist here. Technical support, you can email systemsupport@la.gov. You can always look through that observation system user guide to give more clarity. For everything else, just email us at earlychildhood@la.gov, and one of us will always be checking that and are ready to help you and support you in whatever it is that you need. That's the end of the webinar. Thank you guys for your time. We appreciate what you do here. We know it's hard work, and we know that there's been a lot of changes that have occurred. We're learning it right alongside you guys, and so never feel like there's any dumb questions. Never feel like you're in over your head. Always feel free to reach out, and we'll all get on the same page and get us all where we need to go. Thank you, guys.